Welcome to the channel, guys. We recently released a 53-minute long masterclass from some of the guitarists that were at GroundUP this year, GroundUP Music Fest. It was great. We had Kurt Rosenwinkel, Isaiah Sharkey, Mark Lettieri, and Chris McQueen. One of the main things in that video that was requested was for me to go over some of the warm-ups that these guitarists talked about. So we're going to break down each of the warm-ups that these guys showed off, some of the detail to it, as well as my thoughts on it. And then at the end, I'm going to talk about some of my favorite warm-ups and how I like to think about warm-ups that's a little bit different than what these guys were demonstrating. Let's get into it. All right, so right off the bat, we had Kurt's warm-up, and it sounds like this.
I always like to skip that one note in there.
So in that warm-up, it's a pretty common one. He's demonstrating the chromatic scale. A couple things to note here is that he starts low to high, and then also where he transitions. So starting off here, using all four fingers, right? We use the low open E string. It's the lowest thing we have. After 4, he shifts quickly to another 4. So when we're doing this chromatic scale, a lot of times what's good technique here is using all 4 fingers and then doing a quick shift. Another detail here that can make this easier is the thumb in the back, using that as a pivot. You'll see my hand kind of swings, almost like a monkey swinging from a branch. We swing from here, and that shift, while my thumb is still connected, lets me make that smooth. So, and then going to the next set of strings, he stays around this 5th position, and we do this one thing. It's 5 notes per string. The way we get that extra 5th note is we start back a fret. So starting on the 4th fret, and then shifting our 1st finger up. So again, your thumb stays back here, we shift down, shift with the 1st finger back up. He does that for each of these strings. He doesn't do it obviously between the 3rd and the 2nd string because we're keeping the chromatic scale, and the E flat goes right into E. So between 3rd and 2nd, you don't do that little shift. Once we get here, he just stays on this string. 4, 4. And if you have a few extras, you just basically use your pinky to get up to those last little bits. So that's how he's doing the chromatic scale. He goes back down on it, but I want to get to his next warm-up. He actually shows us 2. This next one is using 5ths. Let's hear how Kurt plays this second warm-up.
I like this one too. Like that. Just to warm up the physical thing.
So this is, again, sort of a one that gets us all the way across the fretboard using something that really jumps us quickly. So he starts off on G, and it's G, D, and then we have G, D, G, D, G. So just one note per string. Coming back down though, we don't go in that same direction. We actually stay going ascending from here. So from here he goes, and then jumping. So starting on a half step above. Now A flat. Then we go to A after A flat. The fingering here that he does sometimes is a little interesting. It's like 1, 3, and then 2. And then 1, 2, 1, pinky. And you could continue that further. Next up, I want to look at Chris McQueen's warm-up. It flows really nicely based on what we just did with the chromatic scale here. And this is another really, really common one. You'll see a lot of guys recommend this as a warm-up. And it's really based on finger pattern. So our fingers 1, 2, 3, and 4. We don't have a number for the thumb, just the 4 fingers we fret with. And the idea here is staying in a position and warming up the fingers physically. That was also Kurt's point, is that he does these warm-ups to warm up physically, and I'll get back to why that is important in a minute. So let's look at Chris's warm-up. And let's listen to him play it first.
Just trying to get to know the instrument, like Kurt was saying, like trying to feel good, show off. And then when you get up here, you turn it back around.
I've never seen a guitar played so slow.
So essentially what he's doing, he stays in this position, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Not chromatic, because we end up skipping the note sometimes on our string that would make it chromatic. So it's a little bit different than Kurt's in the chromatic sense. Just focus on fingering. And then again, when we get to the top, he reverses it. So if we do 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, then you go 4, 3, 2, 1. And sometimes when we do that 4, 3, 2, 1, you shift up 1 and then do 4, 3, 2, 1 descending. And then you would shift up 1, 2, etc. So that's the first one he demonstrated, and then after that he goes into some different finger combinations. The next one he demonstrates is 1, 4, 2, 3. And then descending he goes 4, 1, 3, 2. The idea here is that if we want to warm up our hands, our fingers, especially the left hand, we run through different possible combinations that our fingers might play. I tend to have a little bit of an issue with this as an idea for a warm-up, and some of the warm-ups in general do this better than others that we'll look at. And it's really that we forget that the warm-up has to be physical. We need to warm up our hands, but we also need to mentally warm up. And to that extent, I don't see a lot of warm-ups that are recommended or that guys will do really focus on that element of it, that a lot of times we need to get our brain in gear. And what's interesting is sometimes when I'm watching these guys, especially like before their performances, I don't see them do these warm-ups. What I see them do is something that warms up their hands and their mind. They'll be running through different parts of the songs that they're going to play within that set. They'll be running through different passages that are challenging for them, making sure that they're warmed up through those difficult parts. So take some of these warm-ups with a grain of salt. Really try and focus on what people actually do and not so much necessarily what they're saying they're doing, although these can be good to warm up physically. Let's look at Mark Lettieri's warm-up next. Now this one's very focused on picking technique, and it's kind of cool. It deals with hybrid picking. So Mark Lettieri does a lot of this chicken picking, Travis picking stuff. And one of the things that he says he needs to warm up on with this is that hybrid picking. So hybrid picking, we have our thumb and index finger holding the pick, and then our middle and ring finger as like finger picks. We don't usually use the pinky here. And this is notated in the PDF as M and A, and that's coming from traditional finger picking notation for classical guitar. So the warm up here that Mark Lettieri does, I'll let him play it first so you can hear what it sounds like.
I do this kind of goofy, like, sort of hybrid picking thing where I take this shape and I move it across the strings. Very musical.
So in this one, we have a down and a down pick. So down, down, and then our middle finger picks the next string, and then our ring finger picks the string after that. And you can do it just on one string set just to get comfortable with the right hand part. And then move on to doing all the string sets here. We really want to make sure each note's clear. When I'm doing this, some of the notes are ringing over, and they shouldn't do that unless I wanted them to. When he gets to the top, he does a pull off, middle finger, and now we switch from down, down, kind of a slight rotation of the pick or the wrist, and doing up, up. So it should be in reverse, ring, middle, up, up, ring, middle, up, up, ring, middle, up, up. And we reverse the direction of this. It's not important so much what these notes are. This is really just to give us a kind of consistent flow for our right hand. This one is really more about warming up our right hand. The last warm-up that I want to look at is Isaiah Sharkey's, and this one's a really interesting one, probably the most complicated of the ones presented here. And in this one, he shows us this really extended pattern, again, all the way up the fretboard. That's one thing that's really common here among all these guitars, is that their warm-ups really go through the whole fretboard. There's this idea of warming up not just in a single position, but making sure you go across the whole fretboard, which I think is accurate. And this one, what I like about it, in addition to the other ones, is it does have a more musical element. Anything that has a bit more of a musical element to the warm-up is going to engage your mind quite a bit more. It's not as easy to zone out and just play through. It's one of the issues I have with these 1, 2, 3, 4 patterns is you could just, and you'll sometimes get this recommendation, sit at the TV and just, but that doesn't train good technique. You won't be noticing when your technique is falling apart, deteriorating, and you won't be as focused as you need to in order to really play it with good technique. So let's listen to Sharky play this warm-up. It's a really nice one.
That's your warm-up?
Yeah, what?
That's like some people's records, man.
Come on.
Couple things I want to point out here from what Sharky's doing. We have a few different techniques going on here that are probably important in the way that Sharky plays for him to warm up. So some of it is this slide, these slides, and these extended intervals. And then also the roll with the hammer-on. You see that a lot in his style of playing. So it makes sense that he wants a pattern that warms that up. And then jumping to kind of going off like this C voicing. So all of this is really based around F for this first one. Like an F major 7, sharp 11. Making sure we slide with that ring finger here and then get that last note with the pinky. Then what he does in order to quickly span across the whole fretboard is moves this idea in minor thirds. So after we finish this one, we have A flat right here. And then we can do the pattern all again. Like that. Then we do it a minor third above that, which is starting at B. And then starting at D. And then we are back to F. And then we are done. So that's Sharky's warm-up. Another one that I'd recommend for you guys to check out is actually my Infinity warm-up. Now this is a warm-up that will warm up your hands, your right hand and your left hand, and also your brain in thinking through a common progression, in this case a cycle of fifths. So starting at C7, then going to F7, B flat 7, E flat 7. It really helps you not only warm up across the fretboard, but learn the notes all across the fretboard. And it's called the Infinity warm-up because you can do it infinitely. So there's patterns to move up and there's patterns that move you back down. You can keep doing this warm-up until you feel like your hands and your mind are actually mentally ready. So I'll link that in right here. This will be the next video if you guys want to check it out. Thanks for sticking around and feel free to subscribe, drop a comment. I read them all. And you guys can join my free community if you want to get the free PDF for this lesson. Thanks.